Had a chance to catch up with Gary Hershorn. If you spend any amount of time on social media, it's highly likely you've seen and liked, favorited, even retweeted one of Gary's photos. He captures so many breathtaking images, mostly of scenes in and around New York City. But besides becoming one of the eminent photographers on social media, Gary has also had a remarkable career as a photojournalist. He started at UPI and then worked at Reuters for decades, where he covered all manner of historical events, meetings between world leaders, Olympic Games, Super Bowls, World Series. The list goes on. We talked about all of that, and he told a really interesting story about how he got the exclusive chance to photograph Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson as he trained for the Seoul Summer Olympics in 1988. We also talked about the Canadian wildfire smoke that has invaded the Northeast at various points of May, June, and July 2023, and how that's created an opportunity for captivating photos. I asked him too about shooting photos of extreme weather and whatnot, which he takes around New York City, incredible lightning strike photos that he gets. And we took a look at some of his greatest hits over the years, including a shot of the moon that reverberated halfway around the world. Really interesting story behind that. It was really cool to meet and hear from the man behind all these amazing photos that I've been seeing on Twitter for years now. And a quick reminder, please hit the like button or share these interviews so I can keep bringing you interesting guests. So without further delay, here's special guest Gary Hershorn. First thing I wanted to talk about was all of the wildfire smoke that made news, about a month ago or so now, maybe 6 weeks ago. But then it sort of came back today. So you got out there and got a little bit of a chance to shoot, right?
Yes, I was watching the skies today. I use an app called I use EarthCam, which are webcams that are positioned all around the world, and there are about 15 of them in New York City. So I can look at all the different skies, north, south, east, and west, and get a sense of what's forming out there, either at sunrise or sunset. So I was watching a couple of the angles on the sky tonight, and it was very clear that there was a hazy, smoky sky out there. So I ran out after work to try and get a photo tonight.
That's interesting. You're monitoring the Earth cams at all times.
All times. They are my favorite friend in the whole world. they are my friend.
Yeah. And so how do you, so like, if it's okay, I'm just going to pop up the photo you shot tonight. Is that all right? Real
Of
quick.
course, of course. Anything you
Screen.
want, whatever you
Yeah.
like, whatever you want to show. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So you're able to see that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there it is. So you were looking at the Earth cam and you thought, let me get down to the World Trade Center. That's like, is that talk through your decision making
So we
process.
have, I'm always looking for a place to put something from New York in the photo, something that people could look at, like a building that will instantly tell people, oh, that's a New York, without even reading the caption. Oh, that's New York City. I don't know.
Right.
I think the Oculus does that, but I also know that this week, around this week, we have maybe less than a week left where the sun will set in that little hole there.
Yeah.
That's next to the Oculus. On the top right corner is One World Trade Center, and I know that this is the week that the sun sets in that little hole. So by the time I got down there tonight, the sun was almost gone in the smoke. It was already very dark.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
So
orange right there. And I guess a lot
yeah,
of people were down there looking at this.
there were. I came
Yeah.
out there and everybody saw the sun and everybody was standing around photographing it. I it's a hard thing to photograph the sun and a New York City landmark from Manhattan. To do
Yeah.
it properly, you either have to go up a landmark like the Empire State Building, or you have to go to Brooklyn or Queens and try to put the sun with the skyline.
Yeah.
And by 7:30, quarter to 8, the sun is already too low to do that. So that's the one place that I could think of, to quickly after work get down to a spot and try to get something of the sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, I think it's a great shot. I mean, it's really cool. You know, it shows the people looking at the sun, and then obviously that
I'm
orange sun that we've seen so much this summer or this spring and summer.
yes, and I'm very partial to photos that have people in them. A lot of photographers that do the same kind of pictures that I do love pictures that don't have people in them. They're like,
Yeah,
clear the set, get out of my way. I just want to have a clean shot, and I'm the other way. I like to have the human element in as many pictures as I can. You can't always do it,
yeah,
but as I try to do it as much as I can. And
yeah.
I like to have both views, right? I like to have a view without the people and a view with the people. So,
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit more later in the conversation, but I wonder if that
sure,
comes from your photojournalism background. Is that, do you think?
100%.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I
It's a
like this. Yeah. I like I like your eye for this type of photo, you know. Uh,
Thank you. Yes, it is all about our background. Absolutely. What system did we come up in? And I came up in a news journalism background. So,
so
there's always in journalism, the picture's always better when the human element is in.
so the smoke's back and maybe it'll be back for a couple more days, but you really documented it quite a bit going back into almost what mid-May. Um,
Mid-May.
of this year, right in early June when it was at its peak here in and
Mm-hmm.
around New York City. You got some amazing photos, so we'll put some of that up. But just first, before we take a look at some of those pictures, just
Sure.
what were you thinking? Have you seen anything like this before? I mean, you've been around for and shot a lot of
Yes.
things. Yeah,
It's not unusual for a little bit of smoke, to come in every year, every summer. We get a little bit of smoke that comes in. It normally comes in from forest fires in the United States. Sometimes it's from fires in and around New Jersey because there's a lot of forests that burn a little bit, not huge. Like not like those unbelievable wildfires they're having in Canada or say out in California, but
yeah.
it's not uncommon. Last year we had some very smoky days from fires in Washington State and mostly in Oregon. And just how the jet stream works, it kind of comes from the Pacific Ocean over Washington State and Oregon, and it sucked up all that smoke last year and deposited it on the East Coast. So it's not unusual. And there are websites. There's a very good website that I use out of Canada that tracks the movement of smoke from Canada down into North America, or the rest of North America. So it was, I'm always looking for it in the summer and expecting it, but not the way that it came in this summer.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because that I think it was June 6th, maybe June 5th or maybe June 6th when everything
June
turned
5th,
orange here.
June 6th. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything turned orange. The whole story of the smoke coming into the East Coast blew up around noon on June 5th. And the city turned orange on around 2 o'clock on June 6th.
On the 6th, yeah. So I'm out in Jersey, in Ridgewood, not far from the
Right.
city, but things got incredibly dark here, and
Mm-hmm.
and orange, and everything was orange, like nothing I'd ever seen in person. Had you ever seen anything in person like that? Like, obviously I've seen the
Yeah.
images from California when the fires were really
Mm-hmm.
bad, but
Mm-hmm.
never
Yeah.
have you seen it in person before like that,
I've
or?
never actually photographed or covered in all my years a forest fire. It is a very specialized kind of photography that takes photographers who are not only courageous, to say the least,
Yeah.
but who are incredibly well trained in the safety that needs to be followed in covering a forest fire. People who don't know what they're doing can, in an instant, be caught, in the changing direction of a fire and get trapped. You have no idea how quickly you can get surrounded by fire. When I was managing the Reuters picture service, we had to cover the fires, and everybody who went into the fire zones had fire retardant suits. They had to have training. They had to know, what they were doing. They had to have what they call covers, so that if you did get trapped, you could go inside this like tent-like structure that was
Wow.
fireproof to save yourself and protect yourself. So
That's fascinating. I mean, in a sense, it's almost like being a war photographer.
Absolutely. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah,
Absolutely. So I never wanted to do it, but I wanted to make sure that the people who were doing it for us were well trained in the safety of photographing fire. So I never wanted to do that. And
yeah,
thankfully, there, like war photography, there are a lot of photographers who will volunteer.
yeah.
They really get a high of the adrenaline flows when you're in with the fire crews on the fire lines, and the pictures they make are spectacular.
Yeah,
Uh,
they can be unbelievable for sure.
and many of their photos are that really deep orange look when you're in the middle of the fire. And I never thought we'd see anything like that in New York City. I never thought that we would have the concentration of smoke that would cause that to happen.
Yeah, and it's such a low level of the atmosphere.
Right, right.
I'm sure you smelled it. It was unbelievable, the smell that was
Absolutely.
permeating this area as well. It smelled almost like everyone in town had a campfire going all at
Right.
once, you
And
know?
and in the middle of that, I went up the top of the Empire State Building and took some pictures from there. And it was really, really, heavy smell. The
Yeah,
higher up you go, I guess, the more the concentration of the smoke. So
yeah,
even at 100 floors up, it was way more than on the street.
yeah. That's amazing. So let's take a quick look at a few of your photos. I'm gonna
Sure.
share my screen again. I thought this was a really cool shot.
Thank you. See, that was early on. That was within the first week of the smoke having arrived on the East Coast
Yeah,
on May 21st, and I was specifically out looking for an angle on the sun, and that was taken from Liberty State Park, which has a very clean view of the western sky.
yeah,
And I do happen to know local knowledge is the planes do go right past the sun. The planes are coming. That's a plane that took off from Newark Airport,
okay,
and half the time they go to the north taking off, and half the time they land from the north going to the south. So either way, you're going to get a plane going through the sun,
yeah. So
right?
very
And
cool.
it's just a matter of luck, right? That's the only plane in about 30 minutes that actually went near the sun.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
because
went
you only have
below
so
it.
much. Yeah, you only have so
Right.
much time as it's set. That's a sunset, right? Is that if I'm
The
right?
sun's going down, the
Yeah,
sunset's going down, and the planes are going up. And some of the heavier planes go under the sun, and the lighter planes take off in quicker, and they get
yeah,
up above the sun. So it's really, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. But that's the closest I got to a
yeah.
plane going through the sun.
Two things really struck me about this photo. For one thing, it sort of has an otherworldly look. It almost looks like something
Hmm.
from like Star Wars, you know, like
Hmm.
looking out
Hmm.
like on Tatooine or however you say the name of that planet. But the other thing that's really cool is you can actually see what type of plane this is. You know, this is a United airplane.
United, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I mean,
And
how are you able to capture such great detail on that?
well, they're just the lenses, the cameras and the lenses that are made in today's world are so sharp and so clear, and the sensors on the cameras are so good, and the lenses are so sharp that they can capture very, very good detail. And if you look at the sun, there's three sunspots right underneath the
Yeah.
tail.
Is
There's a big one in there, and then three others.
three here?
So
Yeah.
and the sunspots move around the sun, and they were very evident that night,
Yeah.
um, without a doubt. So, and that's a pretty big crop, also, but it held together well.
Yeah. And how
And
far
yeah,
away from this airplane do you think you are? So you're in Liberty State Park, which is in Jersey City.
right next to the harbor, right? That's
Yeah.
by the harbor. So, I could probably figure it out with an app. I would probably say 3 to 5 miles
Okay. Yeah.
is probably the distance
Yeah.
from where I was standing to the flight path coming off of the runways at Newark
At Newark.
and
Yeah.
going directly north. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. That's amazing. Great shot.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so then moving on a little bit, we had a few here. This is so it looks like you're at the top of the Empire State Building essentially, right? 86 the
Correct.
top, or I can
That
never remember.
right. 86th floor.
Yeah.
And this was This was June 6th, so it was. These are from the day that we had the deep orange.
Yeah.
I missed the deepest of the orange color. I was late getting up to the top of the Empire State Building. I saw it mostly from ground level, and by the time I got up to the top, it had started to dissipate a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't as deep and strong an orange color by the time I got up high. I was a little disappointed about that, but these pictures still told the story. You know, you didn't need it to be peak orange.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, this, you can really see that just the thickness of the haze that was still hanging around the city, which is
right. When you compare, I know some websites were using pictures like this and pictures taken, you know, like 3 weeks earlier with what it actually looks like when there's no haze, and they were matching them up and showing both of them.
Yeah.
And it's really quite striking when you compare the two. And it's really amazing.
It sure is. Yeah. And this is the Chrysler Building, obviously.
It is. Yes.
Really iconic building in New York City. Just moving on to this is looking out over MetLife, and I'm not sure which building this is. This is something newer, I think, right?
Yeah. So that is the new One Vanderbilt.
Okay.
And the windows there that you can see near the top are the Summit OV observation deck. I don't know if you've seen pictures, or maybe some of the listeners have seen pictures of an observation deck with a mirrored room. And
no, I haven't seen that.
It's amazing. And you can go to their Instagram feed at Summit OV and see the view from that building, looking at the Empire State Building. It's very, very nice. And to the left of it, with the cranes, is the new JP Morgan Chase building that's going up. That's the newest building on the New York skyline. So I've been photographing that building quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's the newest building. It's the only building that's actually in construction that you can see. You know, New York has so many buildings being built at any given time, but you know, the density of the skyline dictates that many of the new buildings are never seen on the skyline. Yeah. They're not 80 stories tall, or they're built behind One Vanderbilt, or they have other buildings, you know, blocking them. But this new building is going to be spectacular on the skyline.
Yeah, it's amazing too how in this wider shot how small the Chrysler Building actually looks.
It really is. It's not that tall, and it's becoming very hidden.
Yeah, at one time though, it looked more prominent in this part of the city, you know.
Well, before One Vanderbilt, you know, especially from New Jersey, looking to the east from New Jersey, like Hoboken, Weehawken, Jersey City. We used to see the Chrysler Building quite nicely, and now One Vanderbilt is built on 42nd Street, and it blocks it. Yeah, looking across. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing.
They're both on 42nd. Yeah.
Yeah, great shot. So this is looking uptown then.
Correct. Due north to Rockefeller Center there in the center.
Rock Center right here in the middle, and and then Vanderbilt, like you were saying, and then
on a clear day from this view, you can see all the way to Yankee Stadium and then into Westchester County on a normal day.
Yeah, and in this shot, you can't even see Central Park.
No, you can't see past 57th Street.
Yeah,
where the towers, the tall towers there along Billionaires Row. That was you know. So I'm looking from 34th. The view was from 34 to 57, so 21 blocks.
Yeah.
You know, 23 blocks, sorry. And that's it. And then it just dropped right off.
And then this shot, the next shot in that tweet is looking out over Hudson Yards. Do I have that right?
That is correct. You know, so you're looking down at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
A little round thing there. One Penn Plaza has gone through a recent renovation, and then Hudson Yards, and you can't see across the Hudson River. It's just amazing how there was no view.
And Hudson Yards has really become almost like a little city unto itself over there, and even that is kind of shrouded, you know.
It really has, yes. I've spent like 10 years documenting the construction of that building. So
but even in this photo, you're at 34th and what, 5th, I guess, where
Yes.
you're standing here. So you're like
Yes.
5 avenues from there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like hard to see, you know. Yeah, it's wild.
It is wild. It's like I could never say that we'll never see this again, right? In the same way that we talk about, oh, we're never going to see empty streets like we did during COVID. You
Yeah,
know, it's more likely we'll see another smoke infestation than we will see nobody on the streets of New York.
yeah. I mean, it's possible even this summer we could see it. You know, there's a lot of meteorologists are talking about those fires not going out, and if you know the wind patterns bring that smoke down again,
Right.
see
Exactly.
something again like that even this summer. So this is an amazing shot, or series of shots that you got here.
This is sunrise at 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And it was the day that the story went global.
Right. And
Right. So,
yeah. And so obviously right here, big number,
yeah,
5.5
big number.
million. Yeah. So
I've had a few million viewed tweets, mostly lightning over the city, but
yeah.
I had never had 5 million before. And this was, I shot these pictures in the morning on June 5th.
Wow.
And like I do most mornings, put out a tweet, and by noon, the world took, the world's attention and the world eyes were on New York City of what was happening with the smoke. And it was, this tweet was the really out there in the internet world, the only set of images of what was going on in New York that morning.
Yeah.
Because I was, the one photographer that was out documenting the smoke every day for a month, right?
Yeah.
Or this was like for 3 weeks leading up to June 5th. And so this set of pictures, everybody looked at it. It got, the reason it gets 5.5 million views is everybody retweets it, right?
Yeah.
1,810 retweets. And those retweets are almost all coming from journalists, meteorologists all over the world.
Yeah.
And it just took on a life of its own.
Yeah. Let's all amazing. And I want to talk to you in a second about how that all made you feel. But I want to know too how you got the composition of this shot right here. Did you let's say the smoke wasn't there that day. Were you out early to get a shot like this anyway? With what I mean, and what I mean is by
Yes.
the sun like sort of almost balanced on the point of the.
Yes, so from mid to about mid-May until like now, the sunrise, to get the sun rising over the Empire State Building, there's a spot in Jersey City, the Newport neighborhood of Jersey City, that you go to line that up. Yeah. And it lines up from there for about a month. And it is, I know that was, that the spot, and I wanted that shrouded sun with a very recognizable landmark. And what's better than the Empire State Building when you're talking about New York City?
Yeah, talk about something that's instantly recognizable as New York,
right?
But yeah, just a very, very cool composition of that shot, and the way
thank you
sort of, teed up. It's almost like a golf ball on
a golf ball or a balloon, or a balloon getting
really cool. So
lollipop.
Let's talk about how it felt that day to see the tweet do as well as it did. I mean, 5.5 million views. That's enormous. It
was great.
That's more than like the nightly news gets.
Yeah, it was great. It's a lot of fun. I always wonder what it would feel like to have, a set of pictures that so many people were going to view, and it just felt good. You get notification after notification. It's like a slot machine that never stops.
Is your phone just going? Is it like that?
Nonstop. I've got the sound turned off, or the vibration turned off.
Yeah.
But you as fast as you wipe out, you wipe across a notification, 10 more come in.
Yeah.
And that went on for 24 hours.
That's
And we
unbelievable.
all have heard athletes, after they win a championship, they'll say, like Carlos Alcaraz yesterday, "Oh, my phone's blowing up.
Yeah.
I got so many people texting and so much stuff to reply to." And it's exactly what it was. Your phone just blows up.
Yeah,
So
that's wild, and I'm glad. Well, I mean, you're like you said, you get a lot of attention on Twitter already, and have had a lot
right.
of success. But that is truly an achievement there. So
Thank you. Yeah,
I-
it's no through very little. You take a picture, you put it on Twitter, and
yeah,
then
but
and then it just takes on a life.
it's a little more than that, though. I mean, I think you're being a little humble. Because like I said, it's more or like you said, actually, the sunrise patterns and where the sun's
Right.
going to be at a certain time. And I don't know how, maybe you wanted to say, how did you memorize that over the years, or is it something you've studied? How do
It's
you know
both.
this?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's both. So first of all, there's an app that you use. It's an
Okay.
alignment app. It's called the one that I use is called Planet Pro. That's plan as in plan, making a
Hmm.
plan it pro. And it is the go-to app. And it's the go-to app because it will, if you pick a spot to take a picture from, knowing that the sun is going over the Empire State Building, it will pinpoint your spot so that you can put the sun exactly at the top of the Empire State Building.
Ah,
It's like if you stand in this spot at 5:45 a.m., the sun will be on the very tip of the Empire State Building. And there used to be a lot of guesswork in it, of course, but
yeah.
the first alignment app came out around 2012 when I first started taking these kind of pictures, or near when I started to take these pictures, and they really do help. And I don't need to be there at 5:15 to see what the sun is doing. I know the spot I got to stand in at 5:45, and it's right on the money. So
That's amazing. Yeah. So that's
and
helpful, obviously.
it's very helpful, and it draws you out, kind of like an AI uh, picture of the scene, so
Oh,
that
wow.
you have a slider for the time, and you can slide the slider along, and it'll show you the upward path of the sun or the moon. And there's a blue dot on the map. It's got GPS, so it knows where you're standing. So you put a marker where you tell it where you're standing, and you tell it to draw the picture for you, and it shows you the path. So you
Wow.
can't miss.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't try and make it sound like, oh, guess what I figured out. Every picture that I take is planned. Nothing's random. There's not a random picture in anything that I do. It is all pre-planned. I've made my decision, the night before, where I'm going to go tomorrow morning to get the picture that I want to get. The app tells me where to stand, and you show up, just before it happens, and you grab it. So there is some, without question, there's local knowledge that is very important, knowing where you have a clear view versus a blocked view. And the other big thing is knowing the cycle of the sun. And I've been doing this for so long, I always leave on my phone 2 years of the pictures that I've taken. And since I almost shoot every day, I have a very good visual diary of, say, the last 2 years in New York. So I will just backtrack to July. I'm going to go out tomorrow morning. I'll backtrack to early July, and it will remind me visually what was happening a year ago,
Right.
and where I stood a year ago, and that
So,
that gives you that visual
yeah.
reminder, like a diary.
Yeah, it's like a quick reference guide. Like, where do I need to be
Right.
and when do I need to be there, sort of thing. Yeah. Well,
Exactly. And there's a lot of, June and July are not great months in New York to photograph alignments, because
yeah.
the sun is so far north, it doesn't really align with anything. But starting in the first week of August, all sorts of really beautiful alignments start to come back. from various places around the city, both on sunrise and sunset. And so I'm really looking forward to August 1st coming along and getting back out there to do some of my favorite, pictures that happen during the course of the year.
Yeah. And is there something specific? Like, is there anything that you really are looking forward to?
Oh yeah, there's a number of pictures. One is there's a place to shoot sunset where it goes behind the Statue of Liberty, and then the airplanes go through the sun as it's setting next to the Statue of Liberty. It's a really pretty picture. There's a spot that we photographed from that's called Washington Rock. It's 25 miles away in Greenbrook Township on the way out to Bridgewater. Past Short Hills on the way out to Bridgewater.
Wow.
And there are 2 mornings in August where the sun rises from that vantage point. There's a beautiful vista of lower Manhattan from that distance. Yeah. And the sun will come up behind the World Trade Center for 2 mornings. And from that distance, when you're next to the Hudson River, there's no, from one day to the next, there's really not a lot of movement in where the sun, it's in a different spot every day, but it's so minuscule when you're right, across the Hudson River from the World Trade Center. But let me tell you, when you're 25 miles away, the difference from one day to the next is huge. So one day the sun comes up to the left of the World Trade Center and goes over the top in August. Then the next morning it will come up and go through the World Trade Center. And then the next morning it will come up to the right of the World Trade Center. So there's really only the one day from that distance where it's exactly in the spot you want it to be.
Right. And so,
and if it's cloudy, you don't get it.
That's what I was just going to say. What happens if the weather doesn't cooperate? Has that happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. I've done the 25-mile drive to get nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I will say that is where the webcams come into being. I use the webcams, especially at sunrise, to help me make a decision whether it's worth getting out of bed or not to go out and photograph. Right.
Yeah. And what do you have? Do you have like a monitor with all the webcams on it so you can just take a quick glance? Or
no, it's on your phone. It's an app on your phone.
Oh, it's on an app.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with EarthCam. I just don't use it all that.
I mean, they have a website that you can go to too. But the thing is, you have to pay the $5. If you pay them $5, it then opens up access to every camera they have in the world. So if you use the free version, they give you like 3 or 4 cameras around New York, not the 15 of them. Yeah. And so for $5, it's 5 of the best dollars a photographer could ever spend.
Yeah.
And it's a one-time fee only. That's it.
That's pretty good, actually.
It is.
I bet the other app you were talking about, Planet Pro, is it called?
Planet Pro.
Is that a monthly fee? That sounds like they might hit you for a monthly fee.
They do fit you. You have to buy the app. It's only like $10 to buy the app.
Yeah.
But you need to pay a subscription fee to get the feature that draws out the skyline for you. This AI, or virtual, not virtual reality, but
it's
whatever.
Like an AI, just like an illustration, right? Essentially,
right. And you have to pay a subscription for it. It was a yearly subscription. When I first bought it a couple of years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, it was like $5 for the year or $10 for the year. And now it's like $30 for the year. They upped the price a little bit. And actually I got a good deal. They had a big sale once. You could buy 5 years for like $40, and I did that.
There you go. That's not bad. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you can buy So, but the money that you spend is, they're not prohibitive, and it's not, you might think about, if it's like, subscribing to Netflix, right? Where it's like $15 a month, you might say, oh, it might be a little too expensive. I can figure this out without it.
Yeah.
But at the price that they sell it for, it's well worth it.
And for someone like you, I mean, that's just a tool of the trade almost, I guess, right?
It is. It's a must-have tool. There's no question. I can't even imagine trying to do this without that app anymore. And we did it, right? We did it for many years without without this app. But
Yeah.
when this app came out, it blew the doors off of every other app that was out there.
I really have seen your photos and everything, but I think it'd be great just for, it's great for people to hear from you. Obviously, so many people are familiar with your work, just through in the retweets and everything. Many people know what you're doing, but I don't know if they really know who you are and everything. So, I was curious, what got you into photography in the first place? I'm assuming maybe it was when you were young, even as a kid, perhaps.
No, not at all.
Oh,
I had
really?
no interest in photography when I was young. What's really fun and what's really interesting is, everybody in the social media world knows me for my New York photos, but they don't know that I had a 35-year career as a news photographer, a journalist working for Reuters and United Press, before that. And so every once in a while I throw up a throwback photo on an anniversary of something.
Yeah.
And people are like, "What? You did that?" And it's so much fun to surprise them with my past life.
Yeah.
But I didn't get into photography until an aunt of mine gave me a camera in the summer of 1977 when I was going into university in September of 1977. And I didn't know anything about photography. I didn't have really any interest in photography. And she found a camera that was sitting in a drawer it had to have been in there for 10, 15 years. It was an old Leica of all things. It was an old Leica camera from the 1950s that she found in the back of a drawer. And she gave it to me. Well, she offered it to my brother first. And my brother said, no, he already had a Pentax Spotmatic F. And so he didn't need the camera. And he said, I'll give it to the kid. And I was in 77, I was 19. And so I was always interested in journalism, and I was always interested in newspapers. We always had like 3 newspapers come to the house when I was a kid. And I was really fascinated with newspapers. So when I went to university, literally, on the first day I went to university, I picked up the student newspaper at York University in Toronto, Canada. And they had a little ad in one of the corners of one of the pages that said, "We're looking for photographers to take pictures and help us out." And I, being a terrible student who didn't like school and didn't want to be in university, which is a whole other story in itself, I never intended to go to university, but I ended up going with a little bit of pressure from my mother, to say the least.
Just a little.
It was just a little arm twisting, and I ended up going to university. And I guess subconsciously, when I saw that ad in the paper, it was like, oh, this is good. Maybe I can get out of going to class. And so I walked into the paper, which was very unusual behavior for me because I never did any kind of extracurricular activity at school. The bell went, I was the first one out the door. Hated going back to kindergarten. I hated being in the school. And so anyhow, I ended up in the student newspaper. It was a Monday afternoon. I ended up in the paper. They said, I said, if you guys teach me how to use a camera, I really don't know what a shutter speed is from an f-stop, but I'll be more than happy to take pictures for you. And they took me under their wings. There was a photo editor there, a guy named Brian Johnson, who took me under his wing, taught me how to take a picture, and taught me how to develop film and how to make prints, because that's how you had to do it to get pictures in paper.
Yeah.
And for 3 days later, on Thursday morning, the student paper, I guess the first edition, or the second edition of the year, the first of the school year, because they always do a preprint, for there to be a paper with waiting for the students to arrive. But I had a picture in the paper, and I had my name on it. And
that felt
all
good.
my friends were like, "Saw your picture in the paper." And at this point in my life, I'm 19, and I had never done anything that anybody ever noticed, ever. Like nothing, right? You're just, going with the flow, doing whatever it is you do. But nobody, I wasn't an athlete. I didn't do anything, I wasn't musically inclined. I didn't do anything creative or anything, sports wise, that anybody would ever take notice of. And all of a sudden, everybody's patting me on the back. "You got a picture in the paper. You got a picture in the paper." And it was like, from that moment on, it was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's
Interesting.
truly what I want to do.
Do you remember what the photo was that was in the
Oh
paper?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a copy of the magazine, the newspaper somewhere around here. It was a close up picture of the editor of the paper's mouth with 5 cigarettes in his mouth because they were doing a story on no smoking. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, there were new rules. You can't smoke on campus, and they were doing some kind of story. And that was the first photo that I had published.
Interesting. So sort of even
And
maybe like a little bit of a controversial topic at that point.
I guess,
Yeah.
that's, it was a different era. You could smoke everywhere back then,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so that was my first picture in the paper. And then every week, the paper came out, I had photos in it. I started covering some sports. I started photographing what they call weather photos, walking around the campus. I photographed politicians coming to give lectures. I photographed everything. It was a really, really nice introduction to what a news photographer would do. And within that was in September of 1977, and in September 1978, I started freelancing for the Globe and Mail.
Wow.
So, which is like the New York Times of Canada. It's the paper of record,
Yep.
and it is. I don't know how I did it. I don't know. I went from nothing in September 1977, not knowing how to use a camera, to literally 1 year later freelancing for a daily newspaper.
Wow.
And then 1 year later, I found UPI in the September or August, sorry, of 1979, and that's when I realized my first aha moment was having a picture published and saying, "Yay, that's what I want to do."
Sure.
And then my second aha moment was 2 years later, taking pictures for a wire service after a year of taking pictures for a single newspaper and seeing the pictures that I took for the wire service in all the papers across
Yeah.
Canada. And it was like, oh, well, that's where I want to. Why would I want to have pictures in one paper when I can have them in all the papers?
Right. Right.
I was just a young punk who didn't know better.
Yeah, so that had to be very gratifying, right? And I were you getting also at the time like editors were they really giving you a lot of good feedback that
Well,
were using your work, right?
yes. So I had what I will always consider to be the greatest mentor and teacher ever, the guy named Bob Carroll. He ran United Press up in Toronto, and he's the one that took me under his wing and taught me everything I know about being a news photographer. And that was in the fall, it's like August, September of 1979. And as luck would have it, it happened to be a very busy time up in Toronto where I was working. Within the first like month of starting to do some freelance work for the wire service, I photographed a number of events that got very prominent use. One was a stuntman jumping off the CN Tower for a movie stunt that was front page news in Canada, and I got the best picture. I was like, again, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I took a picture that landed on all the front pages. But before that, the very first picture that I got published by United Press was a tennis picture. And I went to the Canadian Open tennis tournament. It was on the campus of the university that I was going to, and I took some pictures. I called Bob up. I said, "Hey, I'll come down. I'll show you what I took." And as luck would have it, a Canadian tennis player actually won a tennis match on the first day of the Canadian Open. Very rare, thing, back then, very rare.
Yeah.
And Bob picked one picture. He put it out. It was a woman named Marjorie Blackwood. And that picture was like in virtually every newspaper across the country.
Wow.
And so that was my introduction into the wires. And
yeah. And so when you brought him the photos to show, how does that work? I know today that would just be shooting somebody an email or say, check out my tweet or whatever. But are you bringing to him
the
photos
film?
Printed
the
out?
film.
Are you bringing film? Okay.
Film. Back then it was film. I called him up.
Yeah.
I had been in the office, a few weeks previous, and so I had his contact. So I called Bob and I said, "Hey, I noticed that you didn't have a photographer here, a Canadian tennis player one. Are you interested? He says, yeah, bring the film down. So you go, and it was like a 15-mile drive from,
Yeah. Oh my
York
God.
University is at the very north end of the city, and the United Press was at the very south end of the city, and
Yeah.
and it was well worth the drive. Every mile it
Sure.
took to get there.
And so what happens when you get there? He's just looking at it on film, and does he put it using one of those
Correct.
little I don't even know what
A,
you call it, but the little eye thing?
a loop. You call it a
Yeah.
loop.
A loop. Okay.
And yes, and yes, it is in fact one of these.
Ah, you got one right there. Look at that. You got a prop.
A prop.
Yeah.
And so,
Put that up again because I talked and it cut away from me.
oh, sorry. So
Yeah. Put it up
you
to your
wear it
eyes.
around
That
your
was a
neck.
nice.
It was always
Yeah.
around your neck, and you would just, take your
Yeah.
glasses off, and what you would do is this. You would have, as luck would have it, I have some film.
Look at that. How about that?
And you would do this. Wait, got to put it right side up, and you would go through it frame by frame by frame by frame. And when you got to one, you had a paper punch, and you would punch the very edge of the frame. There it is, right there. I don't know if you can
I could see it. Yeah.
see. There's a punch, and you mark the frame because that's the one you would make a print of.
Yeah. And then you just take it in the dark room, develop
Into
it.
the dark room, put it in the enlarger, make your print, and that's exactly what you did. And back in those days, and we did film like that until I started shooting digital in the mid 1990s.
Wow.
So from with UPI from 1979, and then through Reuters years, I started with Reuters in 1985. It was all film. Everything was film.
Yeah.
And so he would pick the picture he wanted to use, go make a print. Then you put a caption on it to tell people who it was, where it was taken, what the date was.
Yep.
It was a piece of sticky paper that you stuck on it, and then you put it in a machine that worked like a fax machine, where exactly like a fax machine, where a light sensor would scan the entire picture, and it would convert the gray tones, because it was all black and white,
Yeah.
to a sound. The sound would go through the phone or the telecommunication system to a receiver that would take that sound and convert the sounds back into gray tones on a machine that had a little needle and paper, and it would go across the paper and print the picture.
Wow. Now, so you're about 19 years old at this point, 19, 20 years old.
I am. Yeah, 21 when I started with United Press.
All right. So 21 when you're doing this, did that process that you just described there at the time, did it feel at all like tedious to you, or did it feel like this is amazing? I can't believe what we're able to do here.
I can't. That's exactly it. Having never had the opportunity to see it before, I was completely spellbound by the idea of having a picture sent out to newspapers all over the world.
Yeah.
And it was as eye-opening as any technological advance that I have seen, like from film to digital. We went from black and white to color, and then color to digital, like color film. And then the next thing was digital, and every step is just, amazing. And being introduced to this process, you have to also understand that the technology of sending a picture out to the world hadn't changed in 60 years, 70 years. The machine that we used to do that was exactly the same kind of machine and technology they did in the 1930s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
They were using that stuff during World War II, right? Basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before. So, wire service technology really had not advanced. The technology, yes, the wire service technology to distribute the photos really didn't change much in 60 years.
And you're going to college, so you're still are you going to class, or are you just doing photos now?
Yeah, I'm doing photos full time. I bombed out of university after 3 years.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I never graduated, and I was majoring in economics. I failed every economics course. Never went to class. Never cared. I literally found what I wanted to do in the first day I entered university,
Yeah.
and I decided that's what I'm going to do. And I stumbled my way through the first year. I figured out how to shoot a few sporting events and things at the university that the Globe and Mail newspaper was interested in. But my true education came when the day that I brought that roll of tennis pictures of Marjorie Blackwood down to Bob, because it was at that moment that he said, "Okay, I've got somebody here I can teach." Right. I got a young kid here I can teach how to do this job well. And he did.
And so that must have felt really good at that point to find something you had, that you really just enjoyed, especially when just, a couple of years before you had no interest whatsoever.
Nothing. Absolutely. Yeah. Like nothing, zero going on in my life. Right. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't know where I was going. I had nothing. I had been working. I worked for 6 years. I started working when I was 16 at a department store, the Hudson Bay Company, and I was probably destined to a career in retail. Right? They were trying to talk me into not going to university and going into their management program and working in their head office, which was in Toronto. Not just working in a store, but to get into a career in retail. And that's probably where I was headed. And I was dragged out of it by the photography. And I ended up working in my last year or two at the store. I ended up working in the camera department, which turned out to be very fortunate because Canon offered anybody who worked as a camera salesperson the opportunity to buy equipment at half price. I was working at the store and working as a photographer, and I was buying gear from Canon at a great discount. And that helped me get my foot off the ground, having the right equipment, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The hardest part about making a decision about being a photographer is finding the resources to buy the gear.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is not cheap.
It's in today's world, it's unbelievable how much it costs.
Do you ever sort of reflect on, you were talking about that first photo you had in the paper of the cigarettes, and everyone patting you on the back and telling you how much they like to see that. Do you ever reflect on that and how far you've come to, let's say, the 5.5 million views on that tweet of the orange sunrise?
Every day. I'll be honest with you, every day. I feel so lucky and so fortunate for so many things. I feel so fortunate that I was given a camera. I feel so fortunate that I was accepted, into working at the paper with no knowledge of being a photographer whatsoever. My good fortune continued with meeting Bob Carroll, and more good fortune in having the 9 photographers that I worked with at United Press, all teaching, me as a young kid how to do this job.
Yeah.
Right. Feel very fortunate. I ended up at Reuters, and it's just one thing after another. So I reflect on that all the time. And yes, you create your opportunities, you create your luck, you create your good fortune by doing the job that you do or choose to do and doing it well. And the one thing that the really key thing for me was a skill that nobody would even know they possessed until you tried it. And back in those days, cameras weren't autofocus. Right now, you just pick up the camera and push a button and it focuses for you and it takes the picture, right? Or you take the picture.
Yeah.
There was no autofocus back then. So if you were assigned to go cover a sporting event, as the athletes are running around the field, say it's soccer or football or baseball, and the athletes are running all over the place, you have to manually focus your lens to keep them in focus. You have to turn the lens to keep them in focus.
Yeah. Now, how hard is that in a fast-moving sport?
It is insanely hard. if you're a really, really good photographer, and back then we had rolls of film, 36 pictures to a roll. If you got like 20 pictures in focus, you were like batting 400.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And focusing was second nature. It wasn't even like I had to learn anything. As soon as I put the camera up to my eye and started shooting sports, it was all in focus.
Is that right? And
It
you
was
were just
like
able to instinctively like maneuver the lens to
totally,
where it needed to be. Yeah.
totally instinctive.
Yeah.
I was a great sports fan, so I had a sense of figuring out what the action was going to be, or
So you could
what was
anticipate.
happening.
Yeah.
I could anticipate and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
yet you still had to get it in focus, right?
Right.
And if a quarterback threw a 40-yard pass to right in front of you, you still had to get it in focus. I had a sixth sense. I'm telling you, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it existed. It's all hand-to-eye coordination. It's just like, whatever. I had the worst hand-to-eye coordination. I couldn't hit a baseball. It saved my life. I could not hit a baseball. I had no hand-eye coordination for baseball, and I couldn't play pool. Couldn't sink I couldn't sink a ball. I just, it just nothing felt right. But put a camera to my face and put a lens in my hand, and it was like an extension of my arm.
Yeah.
And it was just the craziest thing. And so that is what gave me my opportunities to go to a championship game, or a big sporting event, was because I would provide the editor with a large amount of usable pictures.
Right. So he had a lot to choose from if he was sending you
correct
to the event. So
correct.
What were some of the big events that you shot, big sporting events that you shot?
Well, everything. You talk about everything. I went to 17 Olympics starting in 1984, the LA Olympics in 1984, all the way through to the Olympics in Rio in 2016. That was the last games that I went to. I'm done shooting news and sports.
Yeah.
That was my past life. I went to the Masters 24 times. Golf, U.S. Open tennis, U.S. Open golf, Wimbledon. We just finished Wimbledon yesterday. I was at Wimbledon. World Cup soccer tournaments. World track and field. If it was a sporting event, I went to it. And there's a couple that I didn't go to. I didn't go to the French Open tennis. I didn't go to the Australian Open tennis. Never did the Tour de France. Kind of thing. But there was mostly the other ones: World Series, Super Bowls, Stanley Cups, everything.
Wow. And did you? Are there any athletes or photos of athletes that sort of endure in your mind that you really, that you were just, very satisfied with?
There's no question
of yours over the years.
There's no question. I feel, I talk about luck a lot, right? I talk a lot about luck, and yes, your skill is what makes your luck, right? But I think it was pretty lucky that my career coincided with athletes. Like I became a professional photographer at the same time Wayne Gretzky started playing hockey professionally, right? And my career paralleled Wayne Gretzky. It paralleled Michael Jordan, paralleled Tiger Woods. These are all athletes I got to photograph. Serena Williams. When people in today's world talk about the greatest of all time, in all the sports, I got to photograph Tom Brady winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And I got, Tiger winning a Masters and Serena winning US Opens and Wimbledon, and Michael Jordan winning his, I think I did 2 of his 6 championships, including the last one. So it's a bit of luck that the career that I had paralleled some of the greatest of all time athletes in their respective sports.
Yeah.
No question.
And so you sound like a sports fan. And I'm wondering, when you're out there shooting all of these incredible events, are you able at all to enjoy just the moment, the sports, or is there just too much pressure to be like, I got to get these shots because
Right. You don't enjoy you don't sit back and enjoy it. There's a lot of pressure on you to produce. If the biggest, most important moment of the game happens in front of you, you better be ready to capture it.
Yeah.
And it is really, also you're looking at the event through the lens of a camera. So it's a bit tunnel vision-ish. You use a big telephoto lens, and you're really looking through this, and you're not seeing a lot of what's going on in the periphery of the field of play, and you really are tunneling into a very specific player at a very specific moment. So you don't enjoy it. You enjoy it after, when you look at the photos you took and say, it was a good day.
Yeah.
It was a good day. I'm proud of what I did today.
Yeah. So for something like you brought up Michael Jordan's final NBA championship, for something like that, are you even aware of like what the score is, or are you completely just like you're aware of sort of like
the greatest sports photographers are almost like you're coaching the game. You are following along. You are anticipating what the coach is going to do, what play they're going to run, who they're going to pitch to, who might be stealing a base, who in the moment would you expect to come up big and hit a home run to win the game. You're keyed in, no question. And in a baseball game, no matter what point of the game was, if somebody asked me what's the count, I'd tell them 3-2, 2 out. You're mentally taking note of everything that's going on.
Interesting. But so baseball, I can see that it's a little slower paced and whatnot, but even in basketball or, even football,
basketball and hockey are different because it's nonstop flow, right? But when you're covering Wayne Gretzky, you always know where he is on the ice. And if you're covering basketball and Michael Jordan's playing, you know where he is on the floor. Because you know what? Nobody wants a picture of anybody else. Bottom line, the newspapers the day after, anytime those guys played, especially if it was a playoff game, they're the only guys that were in the paper.
Right.
Because guess what? They had the most goals, or they scored the winning goal, or the winning basket, or the most points, and they were the story.
Or even if they didn't, then it's the story that they failed. They were beat tonight or something. Right.
And if they got beat, then it was, why did they get beat? Why didn't Michael Jordan win the game for them?
Yeah.
So you're right.
I wanted to talk to you as well about, I guess maybe it's different and maybe it's not in some ways, but photographing the weather. I know a lot of what you put on Twitter features the weather in some capacity. I wanted to ask you about that. Just what are the challenges? Is it anything like shooting sports in some ways? Is it thrilling? Is it different?
It's really thrilling. Yeah. There's a whole new reason to have that rush of adrenaline. I hear thunder and it's like, time to go out. But I'm usually out long before the thunder happens because guess what? There's an app for that.
Yeah.
There's an app for that. So there are professional weather apps that have up to the second radar. You pay a subscription fee. It tells you which storm cells have lightning in them. Right? So you know which storms to chase and which storms not to chase.
Yeah.
And that's the key to shooting the weather around New York well. Or it's no different for the storm chasers, out west in places like Iowa and Kansas. Everybody's using the technology to help them pinpoint where to stand at what moment and what the path of the storm is going to be. And it's not random. Storm chasers, people think like, oh my God, it's so dangerous. And it is. It's like covering fire. Right? Because the storms can turn on you in a second, right? But the apps are constantly up. You're monitoring them. You're seeing where the cells are going, and you can take cover and put yourself in a safe place if you
that's
need to.
Interesting. I interviewed a storm chaser not so long ago, and he's been in all sorts of hurricanes. You know,
Right.
some really bad hurricanes. And I asked him, I like, are you ever, you know, scared for your life? Do you ever like worry about dying in this? And he doesn't worry too much about it. And he credits that to extensive planning that goes into everything they do, including
Right.
what you're just describing here, really understanding the weather and so forth.
They are seriously good and serious professionals at chasing storms.
Yeah.
And again, it's not random why these guys get the best pictures and the best video. It's because, they have the technology, the instrumentation, they understand, what the data that is being given to them by the apps means, and they figure out where they have to be, one, to get the video and to get the images, but two, to also be on the right side of the storm, that it doesn't come at them.
Yeah.
And they're in the line of fire, so to speak. So it's not quite like that here. We see the storm cells come in. They can come in from the north, from the west, from the south. And I just see the storm cells coming in, and I go to a place that I know, or a few places that I know, where I can be under a roof and protected somewhat from the storm. And I'm just photographing what's in front of me. I don't chase, it's not like we have, look at the ultimate for these storm chasers is to get the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Right. They as much as they like to be in position for the eye of the storm in a hurricane, right? That's a whole different experience than being out on the plains chasing after a tornado, because you can't always guess where it's going to form.
It's less predictable than the hurricane.
Less predictable.
Yeah.
That's the right word. And with lightning, it's a little more, with the apps that tell you which storm cell has the lightning in it that's approaching where you are. It's a little more predictable. It's easy to say, okay, I got to go out, and set up in one of these spots undercover where I can see the skyline of New York. More times than not, the lightning fizzles out before it actually gets to us.
Yeah.
But I will start watching the storms when they are in Virginia, passing through DC and into southern Pennsylvania by Philadelphia. I'll be watching them very, very closely as they move across Pennsylvania into western Jersey. And certainly as the storms come down from Buffalo, Syracuse, and then down the Hudson and into New York. And, they're all different, except most of the storms that come up from the south don't hit New York. It's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something south of New York. I don't know if it's in Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's in South Jersey. There's something that causes many of the weather cells that are coming up from the south to break in two. And half the storm goes off to the shore, the Jersey shore, and the other half goes up the center of New Jersey. Yeah. And New York gets spared all the time. Yeah. The storms that hit here the hardest tend to come from the north, a little bit the northwest, down through New York State and into the city, or from directly from the west across Pennsylvania, Allentown, and into Jersey.
So speaking of the lightning, I want to put up. Let me share again. I want to put up one of your recent lightning shots that I thought was just tremendous.
I was going to say, let me guess, April 1.
Yeah, this is
April Fools.
Yeah, how about that, right?
How about that?
This was a great shot. It looks like I think from Hoboken. Is this Hoboken or
correct?
Yeah,
this is from Hoboken. This is from one of my covered spots in Hoboken.
Yeah, and
this was there were actually two of these lightning bolts, and both of these, this one and then the other one, the lightning came out of the World Trade Center. Didn't come down and hit it. It came out of the top and just fanned out across the sky. I've never seen that much lightning fan out at once. Certainly you get, one tooth, a couple of bolts, but never. This night was extraordinary. This storm, these two instances of the lightning made world news.
Is that right?
A couple of my friends who also chased the lightning had video of it.
Oh yeah.
And we all had photos, but a couple of my friends had video of it. And the video, because there was video, it made the news all over the world.
Yeah.
Because it was such an extraordinary visual. It begged everyone to talk about it.
It's well, your shot is an incredible one, and that was my thought. I even commented at the time on here. There it is, right there. It looks more like it's striking the sky.
You knew, yeah, you knew, and I said exactly what it was.
Look, I've worked in the weather space a little bit, but I'm not by any stretch a meteorologist, so I don't know. But I was like, that's kind of what it looks like is happening. And you confirmed exactly what it was.
Yeah,
but just thought that
you can see, yeah.
Yeah, just
it's brighter at the bottom than the top. So
yeah, and
it's definitely going out.
And a tremendous, I mean, just the thickness of that bolt coming out
was incredible.
Yeah,
and it happened twice within about 2 minutes.
Is that right?
I think on Twitter, yeah. I mean, it's. I think I posted both of them on Twitter, but this was the first one that I put up.
I think you're right. There was two,
but it was extraordinary. It was an extraordinary. I mean, you know, I've been photographing lightning going all the way back to 2012, but nobody was doing it. I miss those days. Nobody was doing this stuff.
Now everybody's doing it. Yeah.
Now everybody's doing it.
Now, you're standing over there, maybe, was that like Pier C or something? Is that where you are?
It was far, just a few blocks farther up, called the Fishing Pier, underneath of Stevens. It's like equivalent of around 6th or 7th Street.
Yeah.
A few blocks up from Pier C, yes.
Now, when you're doing that, do you ever feel like you're in danger at all? I'm kind of asking you the same question I asked.
Yeah. I don't. I haven't, had a reason to. Maybe I'm just too stupid when it comes to that, thinking that, lightning is not going to hit me. I have had, I won't say close calls with lightning, but I will say that there are two memorable strikes that were near me that were pretty impressive. One I had a picture of. It was like in the middle of the Hudson River. Wow. And it was like, when you look at the picture, and I'm like, that's really darn close.
Yeah.
It's not really far out into the river where that lightning bolt hit. And the other time was it hit the roof of Stevens Institute, the college here in Hoboken, their tall building on the campus. And I was just below the building next to the Hudson River. And their building was just behind me up on a hill. And the lightning that hit their building sizzled. I mean, some of the lightning, I call them sizzlers. Some of the lightnings are just like milliseconds. It's like a flash as fast as you can blink.
Yeah.
It comes and goes. And then there are lightning bolts that literally hit a building and just sizzle. They hold for like 3 seconds, and it just, you can feel the energy, and it was right behind me.
Wow.
And thank God I'm higher, but
that must give you a bit of a scare in the moment, right?
In the moment, it's like, wow, that's wow. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be out here.
Yeah. I want to show one more quick one of this is pretty recent. I think maybe even from in the last week or so. Now, this one maybe looks like you were up around the GW Bridge, perhaps, or no, maybe not.
No, Weehawken. That's from Weehawken.
That's Weehawken, yeah.
That's by Hamilton Park in Weehawken. And I went out that night. This is right around sunset. And I went out because the app said there were lightning cells heading, into New York City from the south.
Yeah.
And the storm came through, but there was no lightning.
No lightning, but some really dramatic skies came out of this. And
right. Yeah.
And a very cool shot. Now, so when this happens, right, you look in the app, you see the lightning. How do you get yourself quickly to a place like that in Weehawken?
Living in Hoboken.
Yeah. I'm
in the middle of, the the area of coverage is really from Bayonne in the south to around the George Washington Bridge in the north.
Yeah.
Right. And so Hoboken is kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So it's not a far distance to get to the river. I'm only 5 blocks from the river, to the Hudson River. And so as this stuff is coming in, I can be somewhere in 10 minutes.
But like, let's just say for that, for instance, there, I mean, even I know I lived in Hoboken. I know that even if you hop in a car, that you're not necessarily getting anywhere very, very quickly.
You'd be
I feel like
surprised.
you need to get places quickly. Is that what you're doing? Just hopping in a car and getting there?
Yeah. I'm jumping in the car, or in some cases, my bike. A lot of my sunrises,
yeah,
my sunrises in the summer are almost all taken on a bike,
yeah,
because I can cover more territory on a bike. And there's a big difference between living in New Jersey and photographing the skyline and doing this stuff to living in New York, specifically Queens or the Bronx, not the Bronx, sorry, Brooklyn, and doing this stuff, because it makes sense that, from Jersey, we see the sun coming up at sunrise, and we see the color on the city at sunset. And from Brooklyn and Queens, it's just the reverse, right? And I much prefer the Jersey look. I think the skyline looks better from Jersey. Yeah. But the big difference is you can go anywhere from virtually the Brooklyn Bridge to Bayonne, fairly reasonable speed, and park your car for free everywhere. I'm very proud of that. There's free parking everywhere you want to photograph from.
Is that right?
Or if it's not free, it costs you $1.
But is it always available? Like, is there always some?
Always available? Really? Always available. I tell you, it's just I'm never shut out of a parking spot. Yeah. And try doing that in Brooklyn and Queens along the East River. You won't find anything.
Yeah, I know in the city, forget it.
Forget it. But where you want to take pictures from, I find it's reasonably, for residents, right?
Yeah.
There's parking for residences, and along the river, it's not that hard to find a spot to park. I'm a contributor to Getty, so all the pictures that I put on Instagram or Twitter are also given to Getty as a news photo for newspapers tomorrow.
So that's phenomenal. So you've really worked for, basically all the major wire services, UPI, Reuters.
UPI, Reuters. I've never worked for AFP or EPA, right, or AP. I did a couple of freelance assignments for AP after I left Reuters, and I don't work for Getty. I contribute to their service. Yeah, exclusively. I give them. They're the only agency I work with, and they are incredible. The eyes of the world, the eyes of people wanting to purchase photos for publication are on Getty more than anywhere else. So pictures of the smoke did very, very well. They were purchased by publications, around the entire globe.
Yeah.
And it was, as the editor of the director of photography for their news in the United States said to me, "It was your Super Bowl." That day of orange skies. He said, "That was your Super Bowl." I was like, "Exactly it. That's my Super Bowl." Yes.
Yeah. Right? It was, and you got it. You got the shots, as you've done so many times before. So I'm wondering, with all this, like with your career, you've had quite an illustrious career. What keeps you motivated at this point? How do you what is there some photo that you still haven't gotten? Are you always chasing like the perfect photo?
Yes,
that's slightly
absolutely.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
You're always chasing another photo. You're always chasing a better photo. You're always chasing, something like you might have a very specific alignment of a full moon rising behind a building from a certain spot, and it may only line up. Like, for example, that vista that's 25 miles away. The full moon rarely lines up with that view. And I spent, I think, 4 years trying to capture that full moon rising behind from the first time I attempted to go out. And it was cloudy, of course. And the second time it was cloudy. The third time it was cloudy, you know, and it only happens like every year and a half until finally it was clear on the most important night for it to be clear, when we had a couple years ago, we had a blue moon on Halloween.
Mm.
So it was one of those moon rises that was a global event. As I got to tell you, every month now, newspapers around the world treat the full moon like it's a major event.
Yeah, well, they, you know, first of all, when it's a super moon, everybody loves that, right?
Everybody loves it.
Looks a little bigger in the sky, but there's a huge interest in astronomy out there. You know,
there is, and growing by the minute.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I go out, you know, and you know, the most published photos that I have are usually the full moons.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. And everybody's in love with full moons to begin with. And it is incredible how many publications are now running a gallery from around the world the morning after a full moon.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's the Daily Mail newspaper or space.com or the London Sun, or it doesn't matter what, New York Post. You know, everybody runs a gallery of the full moon from around the world. So
yeah,
I try to always be the photo from New York. I do my best to try and be the photo representing New York City.
Yeah, and
I've noticed those galleries.
I've noticed you've had quite a lot of moon shots. Often with the Statue of Liberty, or Lower Manhattan, and I want to go through some of your greatest hits here right before we wrap up. So we'll get to a couple of those. But before we do, I want to start on the on some of your old news shots that you talked about putting up. So I'll share my screen again here, and there's this one. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I'm seeing that. That was 1989. That was trying to think if that was my first. I think that was my first trip to Havana.
Yeah.
And I've been to Havana like, I don't know, 20 times now, but I think this was my first trip to Havana, and it was really interesting being in Havana, and then to see Gorbachev, you know, come and hug Castro. Wow.
Now I wonder if do you experience, as a photographer in a situation like this, do you experience like maybe sort of the same feeling that you have when you're photographing Michael Jordan or Serena Williams or Wayne Gretzky, something like that? Yeah.
Yes, because you know what the big difference is.
What's that?
The news pictures like this tend to land on the front page of the newspaper, and the sports tends to land on the front of the sports section, unless they've won the championship, and the championship becomes national news, and the game winning night is the championship winning night is on the front page, right? But so the news photos land on the front page of the paper, and that's a super high when the New York Times runs you on the front page.
Sure. That's amazing. And just, I mean, you're talking about no matter what you think of Castro or Gorbachev, whatever, right? You're talking about two very, very significant 20th century world leaders here.
Absolutely.
So the gravity of that you have to be feeling that, right?
You are under pressure to capture the moment. Again, like sports, you got to be in focus.
Yeah.
No autofocus, right?
No autofocus in 89? They still didn't have it yet?
Not the first autofocus was in 1990.
Wow.
1991.
Yeah. So you're on the cusp of autofocus.
On the cusp of autofocus. And I shot the first event that we shot autofocus with was the World Athletics Championships in 1991. And Mike Powell set a world record in the long jump, beating Bob Beeman's 1968 record. And that record still stands in today's world. It may never be broken.
Yeah.
And it's, 1991 to 2023 is still, nobody's even come close to jumping what Mike Powell did that night in Tokyo. And I shot that with autofocus. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that was
yeah,
the first event we did autofocus. So, you shoot the news, and it's as important. You got to get it in focus. If you're not in focus, you don't have the moment. You don't have the picture if you're not in
yeah.
focus. You can have the moment, but if it's fuzzy, you didn't get it. And
And
we
all
all
right, so
experience.
let's move on to one here. This had to be in focus, and obviously it was for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Back in 1985, Tina Turner and Bryan Adams. Yeah,
yeah,
both had
yeah,
great careers. Yes.
yeah, and it's interesting too. Just these photos. I mean, Tina Turner just died recently, and
Yeah.
Gorbachev, I think, died not so long ago either, right? Maybe
Yeah,
within
it was a lot last year. Yep.
yeah, last
Fall
year.
of last year, like
Uh,
September of last year, and
yeah,
here this is a wire photo, and you can see the caption. That's what we put on every photo that we sent out to the world.
to the newspapers. Yeah,
Yep.
um, yeah,
Listed the event and the city it was taken in, and the date, who's in the picture, what
yeah.
the event is again, and yep, and your name.
Yeah. Now, do you recall? And this is going to be a hard one, I imagine, but maybe you do. Do you recall what they were saying at this moment?
I have no idea.
Because they
I have
look like they're both
absolutely
into
no
it. It
idea.
seems like an intense song, you know?
Young Bryan Adams, boy, he was young back then.
Yeah.
1985. And he
Yeah.
was hot. He was a big star. And
So those were very newsy photos, and
right.
I do
Mhm.
like news photos. I mean, I'm kind of a news junkie, but I feel like there's news photos have like a candor to them that you just kind of can't get in any other portrait or anything like that. So they just spoke to me on some level, and just the historical significance of the people in those photos too.
Of
Was
course, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, it's a lot of history. I've seen my share of historical moments since 1977, and it is that's what you kind of you get up to my age now, where you're approaching retirement and could very well be retired,
Yeah.
and you reflect back on things, right? You watch documentaries like the one on the Chicago Bulls, and their
Yeah, The
run
Last Dance.
and
Yeah.
the Last Dance,
Yeah.
and you think of, I was there. Michael's talking about, he went and I just watched a clip of it when he won his sixth championship. The whole thing was Michael in the last minute of play stealing the ball from Karl Malone and
Yeah.
going down the floor and taking the shot and all that.
Now put some pressure on the Jazz to score once again. Jordan with 43. Malone is doubled. They swat at it and steal it. Here comes Chicago. 17 seconds. 17 seconds from game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan. Open. Chicago with the lead. Timeout, Utah. 5.2 seconds left. Michael Jordan running on fumes.
And I was there, right? And he's talking about it in such incredible detail, like it happened 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was there, right? And it's like, wow, that's incredible. Or you hear Tiger talking about winning his Masters for the first time,
Yeah.
and you're there, right? And so your career, in the moment, you don't always reflect on what you're seeing or understand the meaning of it, or understand, is this going to hold up and withstand the test of time? And now that you've distanced yourself from it
Yeah.
and you look back on it, it's like, wow, the home run chase with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, that
Yeah. That
that
was
blew
amazing.
up.
And
That
you were
was
photographing.
amazing to be in.
Yeah, you were photographing a lot of that.
3 weeks of being on the road chasing Mark McGwire,
Oh, that's
and Sammy, absolutely, and
yeah.
things like all the Olympics and Ben Johnson, winning the 100 meters in 1988 in Seoul and then testing positive. He was a friend of mine. You know, right? I spent my summer with Ben photographing him, like the only photographer in the world that had access to him.
Yeah.
And you know, no athletes in the world were bigger than Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis in the summer of 1988. Yeah. And Ben is training at a track, you know, a mile from my house in Toronto, and you know, built up a friendship with him and a trust with him.
Yeah.
You know, funny story about Ben, right? How do you build up trust with an athlete? You know, it's all about, you know, if you want to hang out with somebody, it's all about trust, right? And Ben was chased by paparazzi. He was a celebrity. He was the number one athlete. Everybody was anticipating the 100-meter race at the Olympics in Seoul, and I wanted to photograph Ben, you know, training and stuff like that. So I met him, and he said, yeah, okay, you can hang out at the track right now. You know, let's see how it goes. And within a couple of minutes, he was standing out on the track, and I had my big lens. I told him I wouldn't be in his face. I'd photograph from a distance. And he's out on the middle of the track on the 100-meter straightaway, and he dropped his pants and his shorts, and he's standing there in his jock strap, right? And he's staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and he's staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and I'm not looking through my camera. And he's like, is he going to take this picture or not? Right? And my feeling was, if I take this picture, I'm never coming back. Right? Because I'm like all the other paparazzi. Yeah. Oh, I got Ben with his muscles bulging and his jock strap. And, you know, this picture is going to be seen all over the world. And I stood there and I waved. Okay, thanks, Ben. I'm not taking the picture. And from that moment on, he gave me 100% access to everything that he did. I was in the weight room. I was in the massage room where he was getting all his injections. I didn't see any, but you know, I had access to the trainer, to the lawyer who was providing the drugs and the Winstrol, and, you know, Stanozol for him. But the point is, as a photographer, and every photographer needs to know that if you want to do something special, especially with an athlete, you have to build the trust, and the person will test you at some point.
That's what I was going to say. Was he giving you like a little test there? And
no question.
Yeah.
I never asked him about it. I never brought it up, never talked to him, but I always took with me the idea that if I had taken that photo, he would have said leave.
Yeah. Interesting. And so do you keep in touch with him at all? Beyond that, or
I did. We were friends for many years. I photographed him and some of the other athletes that trained with the trainer Charlie, and I photographed Desai Williams. He was another athlete that was in the 100-meter final in Seoul. Photographed his wedding for him, and so we had a very good friendship. Mark McCoy was in that group. Angela Taylor. We were, you know, it was a pretty good tight group, and I had a lot of trust within the group.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, and then we just kind of all went our separate ways and lost touch with each other.
It's fascinating. So I wanted to show too some of your more sort of like artistic side of your photography. So let's take a look at this one. So something like this.
Yes.
Really cool photo.
Thank you.
Totally different, I think, from the lightning, or even like the sports photography you're just describing. Tell me, like, what are you thinking about when you take something like this?
I love shadows. It's all a play on the light, right? Everything is about the light. And this is the Moynihan Train Hall with a glass roof. And the other place that you can do this kind of picture is at the Oculus. And you end up, you know, at certain times of the year where the sun is high enough that comes through the glass roof of the Oculus. Yeah. And it will create shapes and patterns on the floor. So I went into the Moynihan Train Hall very early on when it opened, within a few days of it opening, and noticed that it had a glass roof. But when it opened, the sun wasn't high enough to create the shadows on the floor. Right. So I had to go back I had to go back a couple of months later, as the sun was getting higher in the sky to create the shadows.
Yeah. And so and so when you went in there, I mean, but also just to get this lone person in there, what time of day is this? This must be middle of the day because it's higher. It's high, the sun's
Right.
higher.
It's probably 1 o'clock ish, around 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And yeah, that lone guy in there who probably was the only person in there because when they opened it, nobody was in there.
Nobody was going in. So
you could wait an hour to get someone to walk through it.
Yeah.
At the very beginning. So
yeah, that's fascinating. You had a couple in this series,
right.
And yeah, it really was empty. I wasn't sure if did you get were you able to clear people out of there to get some cool shots, or
it was empty? There were
empty.
very, very few trains going out of there when it opened. I love the light. One of the things as a photographer for like Reuters back in the days that I worked, we didn't pay attention to light. The game started at 7:30 at night, and you photographed in whatever the light was.
Yeah.
Right. And or if it was an afternoon football game at MetLife back then, Giant Stadium, it was at 1 o'clock, then that's the light that you got, right? You couldn't tell them, can you start the game at 3 o'clock? Because at 3 o'clock the light's going to be better.
Yeah.
And you couldn't, so you didn't pay attention. You were more in tune with the action and getting the game of the play of the game.
Yeah.
And less in tune, you just weren't in tune with the light. It didn't matter. It just didn't matter. You photographed it, whatever it was. The beauty of what I do now is I can go back to where I need to go when I know the light is going to be at its best.
You can plan a little bit more and
plan. Like I say, nothing's random. Nothing is random.
Yeah. And also the creativity of a shot like the shadows, I think is interesting too. It's not like, I don't know, maybe you could be a little creative with the sports photography, but it seems like you got a little.
Oh, absolutely. So sports photography has changed hugely.
Yeah.
The difference was when I was a sports photographer, you were lucky if you could get one picture in the paper, right? The game ended and you didn't see anything in the paper until the next morning. And you picked up USA Today or the New York Times or whatever, and they ran one picture of your game, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now you can see a carousel of 25 pictures on a web page of a particular game if it's like a championship game, and you can't be only action. So the photographers in today's world need to be really creative. The sports photographers need to be really creative. And they now have to seek out the light, find the angles. Sometimes it's going up into the stands and looking down to be able to photograph the shadows, especially at tennis. We love going up high and they're serving and you get this long shadow on the court at a certain time of the day. And it is, it's a different world. Sports photography is a different world.
Yeah.
In today's photography world. And
that's one thing that digital, the internet has really given us, and obviously digital photography helps.
Yes.
Giving the slideshow. I mean, I love to just go through a slideshow, even like you were talking about the moon. Everyone does it with the full moon. But on sports too, it's great to just look at or really anything, any big news event.
Absolutely. And there's no question. And I kind of regret that I didn't really work in the era where the slideshow and the artistic interpretation of a sporting event was something that newspapers or news publications wanted.
Yeah.
All they wanted from me was one best picture of the winning moment. That was my.
Well, nowadays, I mean, it's page views too.
Page views, correct. So, my job was to have the one best from the game. It was a great thrill to be in competition with other great photographers from AP and Getty and AFP and have your picture published.
Next one I want to show. I feel like there's an interesting story behind this one. This is an amazing. I can't believe this happened actually. So
Eliza.
So
There's a great story behind this.
yeah, so you want to just tell it quickly? I mean, look, the photo on the left here is you just taking this shot. Are you realizing what you're getting when you were taking this?
I realized somebody was standing there with their arm up. Yes, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look at. I'm like literally 4 miles, maybe 3 miles away in Hoboken. It's like a 3 mile throw over to the edge. And yes, I knew that somebody did what she did.
Yeah.
And it was great. We shoot this picture all winter long, basically, right? Starting in November.
Yeah.
November through like spring, you get this, the moon rises in the sky up towards the north. And so, I did it. I put it on Instagram, and, that was that. And the next morning, I got a direct message from this woman, Liza Jane Sowden, who just sent me her photo in a direct message. Nothing word. She didn't say anything. It just, I opened up the direct message. It was like, oh my God. It was like, what?
It's like,
how is it possible that, sorry.
It's amazing how quickly she was able to,
So the story behind the story is Liza, best friend in New York, is a woman who's an entertainment photographer who follows my Instagram feed.
How about that?
I didn't know who she was, but she followed me. Right. And that was the night before a lunar eclipse, a total eclipse. Okay. The next, like in the middle of the night, I went out and photographed the blood red moon. We had a lunar eclipse. But so Liza comes home. She was staying with this photographer. She comes home and says, I was up, and she showed her picture. Look I was up on the edge. And her friend said, oh, full moon tonight. You should look at this feed that I follow. And that's how she found the picture that I took. And I tell you, every time that I ever take that photo of the moon behind the edge, I always wonder if the people who are up there ever see the picture or could possibly recognize themselves in a photo. Most couldn't, because it's just a very simple silhouette. You would never be able to, there's nothing that distinguishes one silhouette from the other, unless you're standing there with your arms in the air wearing a big tutu. That is instantly recognizable as that's me.
Yep. So
that picture went all over. She's from Australia. She was up here on vacation.
Yeah.
And she said that picture kind of got published all over Australia.
Is that right? Wow. Like the side by side of it.
Yeah. We did the side by side, and a bunch of publications contacted her, and they wanted to tell the story, the serendipitous New York moment of seeing yourself on somebody's Instagram feed.
Yeah. And
then putting the two pictures together.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to show another moon shot too, if we can. This is a really great shot. This is one that's on your website.
So this was what started it all off.
Okay.
This was moon number 1.
Is that right?
It's funny that you picked this one, but this is moon shot 1, May 5th or maybe May 12th. I don't know. May 2012.
Wow.
And this was a super moon.
That's what I was going to say.
And it was a super moon, and it was rising behind Lower Manhattan. Actually, I believe the building that it's directly behind is actually, I think, a building in Jersey City.
Oh, really?
It's on the Jersey City side, and One World Trade Center under construction is the one to the left.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and so
this
maybe,
right
the one that it's going behind, it must. I've never thought of it. It must be the Goldman Sachs Tower in Jersey City.
Yeah.
Right, which was until recently the tallest building in New Jersey, but The story behind this was there was a lot of talk that week about there being a super moon. And it was the first time that I had ever heard the term supermoon. First time I'd ever heard it talked about in the news. But I was working for Reuters, and it was quite the discussion that week around New York about there being a supermoon rising on the weekend. And I just downloaded an app that was basically the first alignment app. It was called Light Track.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first app that I ever found that told you if you stand here, the moon will come up there. No guesswork. Because up until that point, if I ever went out and shot a moon, I was a total guess.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where the moon was going to rise from one night to the next. No idea. I wasn't a moon photographer. I wasn't an astronomy person or anything like that. And so I went out to, I knew that there was a place in West Orange, Eagle Rock Reservation, 13 miles away from the city. And I knew that, when the moon comes up, it'll just be this really, nice, it should be a nice picture.
Yeah.
And back then, nobody was photographing the moon. I mean, I went out there, and the only people that were out there were locals or tourists with their first iPhones.
Yeah.
Or second version of the iPhone, right? I was the only professional out there with professional gear. And when that moon came up and it was that big,
yeah,
I was like dumbfounded because I had never seen the moon rise against the backdrop of a city from a distance that far away. And the optical illusion of the size of the moon in relationship to the building was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that picture got published all over the world and talked about on TV. Lots of discussions about, it's fake. We've never seen anything like this before. I did a chat with, I think, Rachel Maddow, and she did this big thing on why it was real. And it was quite a discussion that picture generated back in 2012. And I have, other than maybe being out of town, I have not missed a full moon since that one. I was so mesmerized by the size of the moon and the way the orange, pumpkin looked.
Yeah.
I have not stopped, in 11 years of going out every night, there's a full moon.
Yeah. And this is another situation where the weather has to cooperate, because I do see some clouds back there, but they just stayed like low enough to, not mess with the photo.
No, they enhance the photo.
Yes, exactly.
Because the clouds dull down the brightness of the moon and keep it orange instead of it being white. When the moon rises after sunset in the dark sky, it's very bright and the camera is recorded as white. So you have to get lucky to have just the right amount of cloud to dull the moon down, but not block it.
So I was in 2012, I was working at AOL.com at the time. And that's when we were starting to figure out how audiences were really interested in, especially the supermoon, And I think that we actually used this photo because we had licenses through Getty, Reuters, and so forth.
Yes, AOL was a great client of ours.
Yeah. So I think we used this photo in one of our, in
a gallery. I have no doubt. Everybody used it. It was published everywhere. That started the ball rolling on my celestial astronomy type photography, and it was great. Just I look at that photo, and you talk about reflecting. You can pinpoint the photos that got you going. Right. That was in May of 2012. And I think later that month, I photographed my first lightning strike. World Trade Center. Well, or maybe it was the next year. It was after the World Trade Center. It was just after the World Trade Center had opened.
Yeah.
Right. And it got hit. I went out to photograph lightning, hoping I'd never done it before. Didn't know what I was doing. Got a picture of 3 lightning bolts hitting the World Trade Center. And no picture existed of that building getting hit by lightning until then. And it ran 2 pages in Time Magazine, the lead picture in Time Magazine.
You got the first shot
the first shot of lightning
yeah.
hitting that building. You know, it had probably been hit already, but nobody photographed
Nobody caught it. Yeah.
Right. So I when I went out and did lightning back then, nobody was doing lightning. Right. And so now everybody does lightning.
Yeah.
You see lightning from every angle.
I know. Now you see it all over the place. Storm chasers get a lot of good lightning shots too.
Yes, absolutely they do.
But
in New York, there are apps on phones with triggers that if a lightning bolt goes off, the camera triggers your iPhone, and it's incredible. Yeah. Your iPhone triggers the camera. I mean, and it's incredible. It's really nice to see a lightning bolt hitting the World Trade Center and then seeing it from 10 different angles.
Yeah, and just to see it at all, you know, and when you capture it, you know, you freeze that moment in time. I feel like living in Hoboken, we saw some pretty crazy lightning strikes, but I never, you know, it's so fleeting. It happens and it's over,
is. You know? Yes.
But you capture it and sort of make it.
And now the technology creates lightning triggers. There's sensors that you plug into your camera. So if there's a lightning bolt, the camera fires by itself. Again, it's not random. It's like, you know, the technology of the weather app tells you to go out.
Yeah.
And the technology of capturing an image helps you grab this fleeting moment, even when it's a millisecond in length. You know, so it's quite amazing to see. You know, the world of photography, like I was talking about how the world of transmitting a photo through the wire service, you know, didn't change for 60, 70 years. They did it the same way. The same was true with photography. And the cameras would continue to get better, but nothing really changed. It was still film. It was still, you had to load a roll of film into your camera and push the button and all that. And now it is, you know, the change that photography has gone through in 20 years is equivalent to 100 years of photography. You know, it's just going so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going amazing. Even right down to the iPhone, you know, like,
right.
Although the iPhone's got a bunch of shortcomings, I feel like I can't get a good picture of the moon with my iPhone, you know?
It's impossible. You can't get a good picture of anything at night with a mobile phone. They have their limitations, but to photograph the moon is almost impossible.
It certainly does. Let me show you this one too. So this is an interesting one. This is another one that's like a little bit more on the artistic side here.
Right, on New Year's Eve.
This is New Year's Eve, Times Square in the rain. This is this past New Year's Eve. So what I wanted to ask you about this too, you're going into Times Square on New Year's Eve. That can't be easy, right?
It's the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing of the year to do.
Is it really?
If you have 2 things going for you. One, you have a New York police press pass.
Okay. And 2, you get invited to the balcony at the Marriott Hotel in Times Square. And so how do you get that invitation? They're a block away from the Reuters office. So over the years, I became good friends with the public relations director of the hotel, and we still are good friends. Again, it goes back to, you know, whether it's building a relationship with Ben Johnson or building a relationship with a public relations director who has something special, like a balcony at a hotel over top of the crowd in Times Square on New Year's Eve. You know, it's life's lessons. You treat everybody politely and honestly and friendly, and you never know what doors and opportunities are going to open for you. And at the Marriott, it's just over time you develop a relationship with people, and it really is special. It's a special relationship. Yeah. You can't do it with everybody. It doesn't get developed with everybody, but it did. You know, it has developed with the Marriott Hotel. So that's how you end up in that spot, one of
two photographers on that evening.
I was wondering about that because you've talked about just the local knowledge, and I guess that kind of is what this
Mhm.
is here. But you always, I noticed you find your way into really great spots to get photos, and
You do, right? You become and it's in today's world, especially in today's world, in the world when you've got influencers and you've got everybody trying to get everything out of everybody. You develop relationships, and the relationships open the doors for you. You get an invite to the Empire State Building. You get an invite to the Edge or to One Vanderbilt. You get to shoot from vantage points that otherwise would cost you $50 to go there.
right,
You can, but you got to buy a ticket to go up
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And or they invite you up for sunrise when nobody's there at sunrise.
yeah. Well,
Like
you
it's
would
not
think at
open
this,
for sunrise. So
yeah, at this point too, though, they want Gary Hershorn up there taking photos, right?
well, they want people who publicize. Yes, there's no question that they like to take advantage of a beautiful photograph of their building to use on their social media feeds.
Yeah,
The Empire State Building is very good at that. They hit me up with a message this morning. We'd like to use one of your pictures on our social media feeds, right? And some photographers tell you, don't do it, make them pay, and I would never make them pay. I would never ask them for money. I mean, if I've already put the picture out on my social media feed,
yeah,
then what's the big deal if they put it on their social media feed?
right,
Right? It's already out there,
yeah,
right? There's no reason to be paid for this.
yeah,
And the benefit is, they have 1 million followers that are going to see that picture, and some of those million people may follow me because they give you, they link to you and your Instagram feed. But they're just really good people who really appreciate the pictures that you take of their building and how you, on your own, by just putting them on Instagram or Twitter, you are giving their building publicity. And at the end of the day, they're trying to sell tickets,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah, and it's exposing you to some new audience too.
absolutely,
Yeah.
there's no question about that. So I really am a big believer in the working relationships that people have. Whether it could be you're a reporter or a writer and you have a relationship with Michael Jordan, and all of a sudden Michael wants to do a book and he asks you to ghostwrite his book for him, or whatever, right?
Yeah,
It's really, really important that you always remember the people who are the gatekeepers to the special places to take pictures from, and whatever. It's always, just never forget who they are and always treat them correctly, and always, treat them with respect.
and that's worked for
And
you,
it, and it,
huh?
yeah, and it pays off. And it's easy to be polite and respectful
Yeah,
and thankful to people for what they offer you. And people remember you,
yeah,
right? And again, as part of that is a courtesy to tag them in your photo. If I
yeah,
put a picture up of the Empire State Building, I tag the Empire State Building. I
yeah.
give them the publicity or the link
Sure.
back that they deserve.
And also just lets them know, hey, got a new one up.
I got another one up here.
So
Yeah, I'm very happy when
yeah,
they choose to
yeah.
pick one of the pictures.
Well, this has been great talking to you, Gary. Really, really fascinating. I appreciate you doing it, and thanks for taking the time. And I really hope to see, obviously to see what you continue to do. You're one of the great
Thank
follows.
you.
So let's actually say too, you're on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter primarily. That's sort of my social media platform of choice. But you're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, but I very rarely post to TikTok. I haven't really got into the whole video. I'm old school. I'm a photographer. I really love photography. I don't have any video skills, so TikTok is unfortunately a great platform for photographers. but not one that I have excelled at. And my favorite platforms have always been Twitter and Instagram, and now we have Threads. And I feel like, as I tell most people, Instagram and Threads to me are a more personal relationship with the audience. People tend to send you a lot of direct messages. People tend to engage with you. There's a lot of photographer friends. There's a lot of people that I've known over the years. Whereas Twitter is a very business oriented platform for me, in that in what I'm doing, I'm connecting to journalists. I'm connecting to meteorologists, who like the weather photos. They like to have a morning sunrise to start off on their own, Twitter feed.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there isn't very close personal relationships on Twitter with many people, who do message and keep in touch. But for the most part, it's really advantageous to be on Twitter and have journalists with 1 and 2 million followers retweet you and expand your reach and have more people see your work. And ever since I got into this business, I got into it because I wanted people to see the pictures that I take. It was really about just people seeing what I do.
Yeah.
And the competition of getting on the front page of the newspaper with a sporting event or a news event. And now the competition is to get on Twitter first. If we have a smoky morning tomorrow, it's to get out there, take a picture of it, and be the first person on Twitter with the smoke in New York.
Yeah. And how quickly can you do it? So you get the photo, it's on your camera. I mean, you can't tweet from your camera, right?
No, you can transfer directly from your camera to your phone, the file.
So you can do that quickly and then just tweet it from your phone
in seconds, and then tweet it from your phone. Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
So if you want, you can take a picture and have it on Twitter in a minute
with a real camera.
With a real camera. And I shoot everything with a real camera. I never use my phone. I never post anything with a picture taken on the phone. And that's because I'm contributing the pictures.
And do you ever
to
take
a news
picture
agency.
with the phone though? Like, are you ever just like?
Yeah. I'll take some family pictures and stuff like that. But I only anything that I give to Getty or hope to see published are all taken with real cameras.
Well, keep it up, Gary.
Thank you. I intend to.
Love the work, love the photos, obviously, and the way you present it on social media. It's really, you're unique. And New York City, really, honestly, New York's lucky to have you, and so is everybody on. They can see those pictures.
As many people say to me, it appears you're having a love affair with New York, and that's very true.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, keep it up, and thanks again for coming on. I really
thank you. I'm really honored that you asked me. I can talk photography, from now until sunrise when I have to go out, and photograph.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was great. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
We'll do it again sometime, maybe.
Anytime you want, I'm here to talk.